All right, people. So let's turn our attention really quickly. Here we go, peeps. All right. So let's turn our attention to our next set of notes. We are quickly moving into the the colonies' reaction to both the French and Indian War, and more importantly, that proclamation line of 1763. In this set of notes and calendar, we begin working on our first DBQ. And in that first, DBQ, which is a document-based question, which is the essential backbone of the AP exam, that will be what we will be looking at first, the French and Indian War and how it leads into the colonists moving towards eventually seceding from the British Crown. So my thought processes are going, because I wanted to read this text message. I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I'm not making much sense at the moment. So I get messages at the beginning of the year from college students everywhere. And I'm just going to read this one just so you know. It says, okay, let me say, I'm going to read it exactly. I am glad you were tough on us about primary sources and DBQs. In every college history class, you pretty much just read primary sources. Then she tells me she started volunteering at the Historical Society in Lafayette. And again, this idea and this type of writing that you're given a prompt and documents or evidence, it is really the backbone of all writing, that you can look and read something, comprehend it, and then more importantly, critically use it to prove your point. That's what we're working towards. So we will, I'll pass it out tomorrow because I want to talk about it at the same time. Our next set of worksheets covering the DBQ and the documents that we will be using to write the DBQ. And it'll be a while before we write it. We'll take a couple steps towards getting to that point. But most important thing is we got to get through these next few chapters. And at the top of these notes, you can see it's called Road to American Revolution. So in this chapter, what we have to figure out is how we go from being happy Englishmen to being upset colonists. Upset enough that we are ready to commit treason, because one of those worksheets that you have is about the Declaration of Independence. And everyone who signed the Declaration of Independence, every person that boldly planted their name on that document has just committed treason. Treason, the one offense that is given the most heinous way to die. And just because I like talking about it so much, here's how you die a traitor's death. Some of you have heard it before, but it's always interesting to hear it again. So if you have committed treason, it is the highest crime at this time that you can commit against the crown. It's higher than murder. If you murder, you're going to get hung. But if you commit treason, you have several atrocities done to your body. The first of which you will be hung until you pass out. Not die, but pass out. Next, depending on how heinous it is, and probably by the time we're in the 18th century, we're not quite as heinous on your body. But at one point, you would have had hot molten lead poured into your eyeballs. You're still not dead. So you've been hung till you pass out, not dead. Molten poured in your eyes, and that's so when you go into your next life, you see and can. This is all about not being able to commit treason again, right? So you can't see. And then next, you would have your genitalia cut off. You're still not dead. Sometimes you would have your tongue cut out. It again would depend on the crime and how cruel this execution needs to be. And then next, you're going to be drawn and quartered, and all your insides are going to fall out. All 3 feet of your intestines are going to fall out. You are still not dead. finally, at the end, you will have your head chopped off. Then you're dead. This takes about 12 hours. 12 hours, of which it is done completely in public. Public all attends. They're all crazed, like, woo, yay, who's next? So treason is not a crime that is committed without serious consequences. In today's criminal courts, treason, again, is dealt with at the highest level. Because of what it does. It sells out your country either politically, militarily, and puts your nation at risk, whatever you're doing it for whatever reasons that you're doing that for. The ultimate is you're putting people at risk. And so by these people committing treason, and I hope all of you have heard of the big John Hancock. He signs his name huge. And because he does that, that's who the British Army will be looking for when they head up to Lexington and Concord. So when they head to Lexington and Concord, the shot heard around the world. That happens in 1773, way before we get to all these other things. And they're looking for John Hancock and John Hancock and Sam Adams because they've committed treason. So the choices that these people make in securing this revolution are serious. It's not something, again, that they know the outcome of. It's not given that the colonists have any means whatsoever to defeat the most powerful army in the whole entire world. How is that going to happen? And without the help of the French, it would not have happened. So they know that they have set forth a course that could be ultimately the ends of their lives. So we have to figure out what drove them to do that. What drives these men to make these choices, especially in a place where they have the highest cost of living. They are living fairly with no danger. So what would they do to bring this into their life? So that's what we're going to be looking at. And most importantly, for our purposes, how this idea of salutary neglect plays a gigantic role in the success of the American Revolution. Without this time period of salutary neglect, when these colonists are either forced to or get to rule and govern themselves, this idea of a new nation would be crushed. And we will find when we get into our next chapters called The New Nation, we were really close to collapse because we wrote this thing called the Articles of Confederation. Anybody ever heard of the Articles of Confederation? It was our first constitution, and it did not work. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And as juniors, we'll figure out really quickly, well, that isn't going to work. That's not a good document. But when we look at that document, we understand that it's the growing steps and the growing pains that are necessary for the nation to get to where they will be a few years after the Revolution. So as we look at that first page, Road to the American Revolution, colonies prior to the American Revolution. 18th century, large percentage of American colonists were proud to be part of the British Empire. It is the best place to be, okay? Newer studies suggest that by 1763, the American colonies had achieved tremendous integration within the empire and did not forget their Britishness. They are British. If they were asked what they were, they would say they were British. If they traveled someplace, they might say, I'm from the colonies, but I'm British. British traditions, lots of British connections. They still send their sons to college in Britain. They still have ancestors in Britain. Again, on average, Americans had the highest standard of living in the whole entire world. And 2B, that is the one that's the most important, land ownership, that people have the opportunity to own land in these colonies that they would have never, ever, ever had in Europe. Never. ever. So this idea of salutary neglect, beginning in 1763, but could be as early as the Glorious Revolution. Between 1713 and 1763, American colonists saw reduced government intervention. So the government is not paying any attention to what the colonists are doing, and the colonists are saying, okay, great, we'll pick this up and do this on our own. We'll figure this out on our own. The Whig Prime Minister, Sir Robert Walpole, believed that leaving the colonies alone to run their own affairs with little interference would produce more wealth and commerce and cause less friction. And he was 100% correct. The colonists made lots of money for the crown. The colonists themselves made lots of money. They took care of themselves. They fought off the Indians by themselves. We smuggled a little bit down with France and traded with them, but everything's okay when you're still making lots of money for the crown. Britain would provide peace, protection, commerce, ensure law, send more immigrants to America to increase the number. Britain's focus was on wars, and that's what we looked at in our last chapter. Colonists left to raise, equip, run their own militias for protection against the American Indians, which they did. And E, again, is the most important thing on this page. Colonists had been left alone, had to develop self-reliance, and most importantly, effective organization. That is going to be key when you try to get 13 different colonies with 13 different personalities all to agree to fight the crown. That's going to be the hardest job. It's going to be the biggest job of these colonists, is to convince people in Georgia that what's happening in Massachusetts has anything to do with them. Anything at all. So if you think about 13 individual people, and you can just pick in your head right now 13 people that you know. Don't pick Gavin. No, I'm just kidding. 13 people that you know, and try to convince all 13 of those people to do something that you want them to do. It's very hard. It's really hard to do that. Even if you pick 13 of your friends, even if you pick 13 of your family, that might be harder to do than your friends, right? So 13 people all agreeing to do one thing. 13 people all agreeing to the same movie. 13 people all agreeing to go to the same fast food place. 13 people all agreeing to watch the same TV show, which is why families now have 5 TVs, right? Because everybody can't watch the same TV show. My husband likes murder shows. I hate those murder shows. I know them all. Snapped, Web of Lies, there's Buried in the Backyard. I know them all because, yes, we watch. That's what we watch all weekend long. All weekend long. I don't like those shows. I dislike them very much. So we have another TV where I go and watch what I want to watch. So think about 13 people, and then think about asking those 13 people to do something dangerous. Overthrow the crown. For some of you smiling at me, that might be easier than picking the TV show. But you're going to ask them to do something really dangerous that puts their livelihood, their life, their family's life in jeopardy. And everybody has to agree to it. That's the challenge that we face right now when we talk about this road to revolution. Because really, the only thing that happens that we know about, the whole idea of what you're taught about in elementary school and in 8th grade, about the revolution, the Boston Tea Party, Boston Massacre, all that happens in one place. If I'm sitting in Savannah, Georgia, there is nothing happening to me. Nothing. There's no redcoats walking in my street. The only thing that we have in common is this tax. And most of us say, just pay the tax. Just pay the tax. We're doing great. So that's the goal of this chapter, is to get everyone to the point where they agree that we should fight and declare this independence. We still don't get everyone to agree, and as we will see that as we move forward. So, in essence, how do we develop this government? We developed a self-government, and again, 3A, 13 separate colonial governments, separate. Americans became used to regulating their own affairs without interference. And this is where I talk about your older siblings coming home from college in the summertime, having spent 9 months dictating every part of their own life: when they got up, when they went to bed, what they ate, how long they stayed out, who they went out with. And now they're back in a household where parents are used to saying, where are you going? When are you going to be home? Who are you going with? And it creates friction. It creates huge friction. And that will be the same thing that happens with the colonies. Wait a second. For 50 years, we did this all by ourselves. We don't need you to ask us these questions anymore. We can take care of ourselves. American manufacturing increased. And at the bottom is that number 4, smuggling. Smuggling becomes rampant as British policy became lax in the 18th century. So what does smuggling mean? And I'm hoping everybody kind of sort of knows what this means, or you exactly know what this means. Smuggling means you are circumventing laws. You are going around a law that prohibits you from making the most money possible on goods and services. And that smuggling for the colonist is trading with the French. Pure and simple. We're going to trade with the French. They're in the Indies. We're heading down there that way. Anyway, let's just go and trade with the French and make more money and not have to be at the mercy of what the British want to pay us. And so that smuggling becomes really important. At the top of page 2, we've got some violent protests. Do I have any Paxton peeps in here? I never have people from Paxton, like never. I always have a Miram person or two back there in the back, Morgan, but do people live in Paxton? Like, I don't know if people actually live there. But, what? I think there are people that live there. Yes. So we have the Paxton Boys, which are one of my little favorite groups. These are Scotch-Irish dissenters. And dissenters mean I don't believe in what you believe. And they revolt against the Quaker leniency regarding Indian policy. So the Quakers are lenient against the Indians, and lenient against the Indians in that they get along with them. As these Scotch-Irish start to move western into western Pennsylvania, and they run up against the Indians, instead of peacefully working out some kind of treaty or agreement for that, they want to attack them and remove them. And so they killed 20 peaceful Indians, and then they marched to Philadelphia, demand better protection, funds for internal, and it is violent. They burn things. They do attack some of the legislators, or I'm sorry, some of the government officials, in hoping to have them treat the Indians in a way that will remove them and not deal peacefully with them. Hi, Randy. And I owe you a sticker before the day is out, okay? And grab that, Aunt Randy, grab that first stack right there, sweetie. That's yours, okay? We're just on the second page of notes. And then we have the regulators. These are Eastern North Carolina farmers frustrated with British tax policies. So this is what you need to remember. Paxton Boys, Pennsylvania P, fighting Indians. Regulators, I do regulate taxes. That's how my little brain works in North Carolina. They see this as, again, North Carolina moving toward favoring wealthy planters. We don't have representation of Western farmers. And this fighting with both of these groups are going to last for 3 years. It's not constant. There'll be flare-ups, especially with the regulators. These two rebellions, similar to Baker and Listler's rebellions, and two future rebellions, Shea and Whiskey. We are a nation built on rebellion. It's what we do. That's how things have progressed so far in 1771. And then the last thing we're going to look at, and there should be a big gigantic box around this, is mercantilism. Colonies exist for the benefit of the mother country. The only reason these colonies are here is to benefit the mother country. Colonies should add to the empire's wealth, prosperity, and self-sufficiency. I already have the grades for the short answer question that we did on Friday. You guys did really well. If you missed anything, and I'll have those for you guys to pick up your papers tomorrow. If you missed anything about just the straight up definition, is that you didn't make a connection between economics. This is an economic policy. It is about making the mother country rich at the expense of the colonies. It's about the mother country getting natural resources from the colonies. The colonies are to benefit Great Britain, ensure British naval supremacy by providing ships, sailors, trade, provide raw materials, tobacco, indigo, lumber, fish, provide a large consumer market for British goods. We can only buy British goods, and to keep gold and silver in the empire. Britain would not need to purchase goods from foreign countries. And on the flip side, the colonist cannot sell goods to foreign countries. So the colonists have to sell their goods to the British, and they can only buy British goods. And that, again, is that mercantilist system that benefits only the British crown. It doesn't, in the beginning, let me take that back. In the beginning, it does benefit the colonists because they have a ready-made consumer. I don't have to look for consumers. I don't have to find consumers. I don't have to advertise. I know that my lumber will be bought, which is a very satisfying thing as a person in the timber market, that no matter how much I cut, I can sell it to the British. As we begin to develop and we become more self-sufficient, we realize we probably could get a better deal selling that to other people. And that's, again, where we'll start to have this issue with the British Crown. All right. Any questions about any of that?